yellow in colour as he goes up the top left-handed. He's through the track at 61 miles an hour. And into the bottom edge, rolling, squealing on the tires, using all the road, lurching about, but really is trying very, very hard indeed. Squeal of tires as he comes out of the top edge there, well on the straight. Stable yet rolls a lot, but that's be what you expect of scimitars. There it is at the finish.
42.99, 64 miles.
Shelsley Walsh, the scene of the oldest hill climb in the world. 81 years ago, the Team Valley first echoed to the sounds of racing cars. Shelsley, therefore, has played its part in the history of motorsport. By courtesy of a major motor manufacturer of today, we're able to look back at that history and the history of one of the legends of Shelsley, the Auto Union. Hans Stuck was no stranger to Shelsley, having held the record here in 1930. The amalgamation of Horch, DKW, Wandera and Audi had given its name to Auto Union. Designed by Dr. Porsche, this car was running in Grand Prix racing, but Stuck was driving the cars on the hills with considerable success. His return to Shelsley was in an attempt to take the record from Raymond Mays, seen here talking to Lord Howe. Prince Bera was there to open the climb. But Leslie Wilson, the secretary of the Midland Automobile Club, and the Austrian were to be disappointed by the weather. In spite of a practice time equaling Raymond Mays' record, as the car came to the line, a short, sharp shower of rain spoiled their chances. Stuck climbed aboard, knowing that there was no chance to take the record, but every chance that the thousands of spectators up the hill would enjoy a climb that many would remember into their dotage. Wrestling with the 520 brake horsepower, Stuck took the car to the top of the hill in 45.2 seconds. Raymond Mays, with the 1.5 litre ERA, was quicker. Here we see Mays' climb from a camera mounted on the back of the car. There's nothing new in life, is there? The crossing. The left-hand kink before the S-bend. Pre-selector box. The next gear already selected, and dipping the clutch gives you the gear you require for the first part of the S. 41.3 seconds. Stuck poses with his wife after the climb. But there were other famous names at Shelsley in those years. Sir Malcolm Campbell, with the world land speed record Sunbeam. Although perhaps more famous for his exploits with Bluebird, both on land and on water, Campbell was no mean racing driver, as he proved here at Shelsley, where he was a regular competitor in the late 20s and early 30s. There were other famous names too at Shelsley Walsh. Mays here with Campbell and Howe again welcomed another challenger in the shape of the young Anglo-American Whitney Straight with a 2.9 litre Maserati. Apart from this, Shelsley gave its name to specials. They were all known as Shelsley Specials, and Basil Davenport's car was a hill climb record holder. The Maserati again, some 20 years plus since we saw it in the hands of Whitney Straight, in the hands of Bera in the immediate post-war years. And watch how the tie struggles to get it to the top. Bera's appearances on hills were few and far between. He was mainly a circuit driver. Shelsley bred great cars as it bred great names. The Norris Special, still in existence today, and the ex-Mays ERA in the hands of Ken Wharton in post-war years. There was, of course, the TT Vauxhall. An example of that we still see now in the 80s on the hills. Wharton again, about to take the record for the hill in spite of the bank. But now to another man who's broken records and held world championships. The Finnish driver, Hannu Mikkola. The story of the 70s and 80s in rallying has been that of Audi. Hannu Mikkola has won the World Championship for them. With the Quattro at the end of its competition appearances as a works car, we go back to the terrain in which it made its name. Here in the Carson City Rally in America, Hannu Mikkola showing all about its legendary handling and the virtues of four-wheel drive. Outpacing a helicopter here, Mikkola at his best in his World Championship year. And on tarmac as well, so perhaps he'll be at home at Shelsley Walsh. Hannu Mikkola and the Audi Quattro come to the famous hill intent upon writing their name in the record books. Hannu, after thousands of miles of rallying, it's 1,000 yards of Shelsley. It must be very different.
Oh, it is very different, you know. You have to get everything right from the first corner, but I enjoy it very much. I think it has been very nice to see all these vintage cars and do this race.
Now, a four-wheel drive car on a hill climb is something that we've seen in single-seaters, but never with the Audi and a rally car.
Yeah.
Do you find that it's a difficult car to drive on a hill really quickly?
No, it's not. It's you know, it's not such a big difference between rallying and hill climbing. But you know, if we should have done something for the car, we should have done it for the tarmac specification. But now it's on the gravel specification, so it might be a little bit too soft. But otherwise, it will be all right.
The Group B Audi Quattro developed some 530 brake horsepower from its turbocharged 2.3-litre engine, roughly similar to the amount of power that Stuck had available with the Auto Union. But the difference is in the drive and in the tyres. Four-wheel drive and much more rubber on the road. By comparison, let's examine the requirements of the current Hill Climb Championship winning car in the hands of Chris Kramer.
It's the car that David Gould and I ran last year, with which I was able to win the championship, which is a car called the Gould after David Gould, who designed and built it as an amateur. And to us the challenge is to run the car as a pure amateur effort against cars that have been professionally designed and built. And we're very pleased that we're able to make the car competitive and also successful.
Chris, I've been up in this course. It must have taken half an hour driving up to have a look the other day. It's hellishly steep. What sort of gearing do you have now on the vehicle for this?
Well, I asked one of your mechanics with the Audi Quattro here before, what is the torque split on your car? And he said, I don't know, but I'm not going to give you the same answer. The answer is that the engines we use almost universally now are bored and stroked Formula 2 hard engines, which have now grown from the original 2-litre Formula 2 engine to 2.8 litres. What they've gained along the line, apart from some horsepower increase, of course, is tremendous increase in torque. And on the hill of this type, the gearing, I think, no longer is any secret. It's something which I developed going back some years ago, and that is basically to use 4 gears, but to use 2/2. In other words, we would expect to run a pair of gears, start to the S's, and at the S's we go to an alternative first gear, which is higher than your start gear, and for the finish we use an alternative top gear, so using what we would call a pair and a pair, i.e. a 2-gear hill.
This is interesting. Now, how did you get into hill climbing? Have you always been in hill climbing, motor racing? I mean, where did you start?
Well, I suppose all these things start somewhere, and having been born in Germany, I got very interested in motorsport as a boy when Mercedes came back into Grand Prix racing, 1955. And I suppose the bug bit at that time, and going back from then, I got involved in kart racing, went via local club events, production car trials, small rallies, driving tests, you name it, anything that they organized, you'd have a go at with your road car. And followed up with that into sprinting, still with saloon cars, using Cooper S's. And I then, perhaps mistakenly, tried a hill climb, decided this looks rather interesting, which was in about 1967. And went from the saloon car via sports racing into single-seater racing in 1973, and with the exception of 2 years, I've been in it all the time. So,
Practice, and time for Mikkola and the Quattro to become acquainted with the hill. This is reality. He's walked it earlier. Now is the chance to see what the car will do. Up to the line, choosing a position on the right-hand side of the road. Everyone waits to see the legendary takeoff of the four-wheel drive Audi. And for the driver's comments.
Yeah, it's you know, it's a normal sort of asphalt, narrow asphalt road. But we are quite used to driving rallying also. It's in our standard very short because it doesn't take more than 30 seconds. So you have to get it right in the first time. Yes.
With practice over, Hannu's fellow drivers find time to inspect the opposition. Reg Phillips, famous for making his own specials, examines the engine of the Audi, while the mechanics get on with the job of the final preparations prior to the start of the climb. It's a far less frantic schedule than would be required if they were competing in an international rally. Preparations complete, the car is refueled prior to competition. Meanwhile, Audi's guests are able to enjoy their hospitality on the hill, while the spectators flock for an afternoon's entertainment. This is Neil Corner's D-Type V12 Auto Union. Not the V16 as in Hans Stuck's day, but now the V12 designed for the 1938 3-litre formula. This particular car was shown at the 1939 German Motor Show. Built along the same principles as the Porsche designed cars, the credit for this must go to Eberhard von Eberhurst. Neil Corner has been responsible for rebuilding many classic Grand Prix cars of the past. By far the most extensive job that he's ever taken on, however, is to rebuild the D-Type Auto Union. It is a unique car, and here Corner tries it for the first time at Shelsley. The confines of a narrow hill are very different to those of the Grand Prix circuits for which the car was designed. Equally, Corner's experience of the car is as yet limited. Everyone watches with anticipation for the opening climb. An Auto Union at Shelsley for the first time since 1936. Through the Kennel Bend with a hesitation in changing gear and strong acceleration up towards the crossing. Immense power between that and the S-bend. Brake, change down for the S's, and a burst of power between the two. And streaking up the finishing straight to record a time in approximately 38 seconds. From a historical standpoint, the king of Auto Union, Bernd Rossemer, had died in a record attempt in 1937. For the 1938 and 1939 seasons, they employed the services of the Italian Tazio Nuvolari, who won the Donington Grand Prix with a similar car to this in 1938. Hans Stuck had continued to drive both then and after the war, while his son is the leading World Endurance Championship driver today, being the current world champion. We asked Neil for his impressions of the car and the hill. Neil, how many hill climbs have you done altogether?
Well, one before this one. I went to Prescott with my 35B, 13 years ago, but this is only the second one. So it's a bit of a baptism of fire, because the first time I've driven this car around the corner today, up till now we've just driven it up and down in straight lines.
Now, this is a rather special car. You've driven an awful lot of beautiful machinery, but it must be something very, very special indeed, even to you, to get into an Auto Union.
Yeah, this is, this is, I think, the most important Grand Prix car which was ever designed. All Grand Prix cars competing today are based on this rear-engine machine. It's got 490 horsepower. it feels very funny sitting at the front with the engine at the back, but I have to say that going up this hill, the car feels quite controllable. I was absolutely surprised, you know, with that amount of power, how nice it feels, but I'm not going that fast. I still think you could spin it quite easily.
Now, you've driven the Mercedes-Benz as well. How does it compare with that?
Well, the Mercedes-Benz which I drove before, the W125, which I don't own anymore, was the car, of course, which was meant to produce 600 horsepower. But when I had it, it didn't have its original supercharger and carburetor on it, so it gave nothing like that. This car is miles faster than that Mercedes-Benz that I drove. It feels as if it's got 150 horsepower more than the Mercedes.
Now, one of the fascinating things is the driving position. You're so much closer to the wheel. Your arms are bent as opposed to straight out. You find that difficult?
Yeah, I find that fairly difficult. If you look at the car from the side, it looks far more like a mid-engine car, but when you sit in it, those front wheels are literally just in front of you, and you do feel as if you're sitting awfully near the front. The driving position, of course, can be explained by the fact that they drove these things for 3- and 4-hour Grand Prix, and they needed to be strong to drive these things over that length distance. And of course, by having your arms like this, you could get more power in at the steering wheel rather than the classical arms out thing. So that's why the seating tends to be so upright, you know, because that was the way you drove them for long distances.
Now, the obvious question is, you brought it to Shelsley Walsh. Do you hope to drive the car eventually on a circuit in
Yes,
Hangar?
this car needs 2 new cylinder heads, which we're making for it now. The original ones, the metal's rather porous, and although it'll run okay for a short distance, no way would it race. We're well on with the plans for the cylinder heads, and I hope to run this car in the Patrick Lindsay Memorial Race at April Silverstone next year.
Well, that's something that we can look forward to immensely, and I've no doubt who's going to win it.
Well, I tell you, I'm going to look forward to it as well, because Patrick was my old mate, a chap I miss greatly, and I've got to have it first time out at his race meeting, you know, and if he's up there, he'll be rooting for us, you know.
Wouldn't be surprised if he doesn't come down and drive himself.
He might indeed, he could do anything.
But let's look now at some of the other competitors at Shelsley on Audi's rather special day. Here, the 2-litre Lagonda replica, and the driver's thoughts.
Mine is about the slowest car here, I think. It'll go quite well, but it won't be competitive. That's the real answer.
Looks absolutely super. Can you tell me about the car briefly?
Well, it's a rebuilt replica of the 1928 Lagonda works team cars, all of which were scrapped at the end of the season because they didn't show very good results. Bits of them turned up on various cars, and on this, the tank and various other parts appeared, so I've rebuilt it as it should have been.
Lesage's time, 66.33. And now, Freddie Giles in Salome slips the veil. Summers' RK Magnet is another car that got things wrong as it came into the S-Bend. But others were more successful. The 1100cc Maserati, once owned by Gino Rivere, who had a considerable investment in the Maserati company in the 1930s, leaves the line. It's a very rare car indeed, was seen regularly in voiturette racing, and from time to time also competed for 1100cc world records, many of which it held at the time. Built originally in 1932, its type number the 4CM. Its time, 39.24, and now another driver talks.
How are you and your car going to do today, sir?
Not very well.
You don't mean that, surely.
No, it's the lack of preparation. It's the nut behind the wheel that wants adjusting.
Guy Smith talking about the 3.5-litre Fraser Nash. This is a top contender for fastest time of day in the pre-41 racing cars over 1500cc, and records a time of 36.59. A neat, competitive climb. But now we turn our attentions to another famous car. Earlier in the programme, we saw Whitney Straight at the wheel of this Maserati, and then B. Bira, alias Prince Birabongsa of Thailand. This is Ivan Dutton in the self-same vehicle, lovingly restored, albeit with a misfire, at Shelsley once again. Not running with twin rear wheels, as was normally the case, because they can't find them. but the car restored to its full 3 litres as opposed to the 2.7 in which it appeared a number of times in previous years. Nevertheless, a 41.93 compares favourably with both Beerer's and Straight's times with the same car. Ron Footit is the proud owner of the ACGN Special, known as the Cognac Special, built in 1925. It's a car that's had many circuit successes, and it's equally a quick car on the hills as well. Roaring through the Kennel Bend and accelerating strongly, this is both a spectacular and a quick climb, as Hannu Mikkola watches. The S's in characteristic style, and the time a 37.08. Morgan's too were regular competitors on the hills. Not on 3 wheels, but sometimes on 2. But back to an ERA once again, with the ex-Earl Howe C-Type car, now in the hands of the secretary of the ERA Club, Bruce Spollen. A fine and typical ERA getaway. The C-Type, of which only 2 cars actually remain, has independent front suspension. Raymond Mays' C-Type was later modified to become the D-Type. 2-litre engine, 6 cylinders, derived from the Riley with supercharger, giving approximately 225 brake horsepower, and the time a 35.47. Next to the line, Ted Roberts in the 4-litre Sunbeam Tiger that we saw in our archive in the hands of Sir Malcolm Campbell. Beautifully restored and in superb condition, the car gets away from the line in magnificent style. Compare the lines of this with the car built 10 years later, the ERA. Bags of power, a lower revving engine, of course. A brilliant climb in 40.33 seconds. A contemporary to the C-Type Auto Union was the P3 Alfa Romeo of 1934, the Italian firm's Grand Prix challenger. Rodney Felton, at the wheel of this beautifully restored example, is obviously a fine contender for fastest time of day. Superb sounds that only an Alfa can make on the bottom regions of the hill. Through the crossing, he accelerates up towards the S's. The time, a brilliant 35.48. Apologies for the adjective to Murray Walker, who also started his commentary career here at Shelsley. With a glance at Peter Jay's Attenborough Special, first built in 1932, no, it's not Biggles, we look now at some of the post-war Fraser Nashes. I asked Richard Druitt, the owner of this 1953 Le Mans Replica Mark II, what his chances were.
I have no idea. It's the first time this car's run for 30 years, but it didn't turn a wheel until 6 o'clock this morning, and it's not going terribly well, but we got it here, that's amazing.
And for comparison, Phil Hingley's full-width bodied Fraser Nash Mille of 1952. Some more of the superb cars that came to Shelsley for a special day, including Anthony Blight's Talbot, an HRG, and an early BMW, before we turn to a Porsche. This is Tony Bancroft's 911 Turbo, a top contender for fastest time of day honours, and one of the men that Mikkola has to beat. The 911 in turbo form rockets up the hill and into and out of the S bend. His time, 32.44. Next to the line, a Morgan, in the shape of Peter Garland's Morgan Plus 8. Now out to 3906cc from its original 3.5 litres, and a car first built in 1974. Superb approach on the bottom regions of the hill, and strong acceleration through the left-hand kink and into the S's. Brakes on the point of locking, one wheel off the ground, and a brilliant climb in 32.63. The Audi replies. Mikkola rockets off the line. Into the Kennel Bend. Notice the employment of left foot braking rally technique used to effect on the hill. Spectacular approach to the S's. In magnificent style, rocketing up to the top of the hill in 29.94. A last longing look at Neil Corner with the Auto Union. Another fast climb on the lower regions of the hill, getting the gear change right this time. The V12 missing slightly, but bags of power between the bends and into the S's once more. Opposite lock, backing off there rather than hit the bank as we look at the Porsche once more. This is the runoff, the fastest 3 climbs. And Bancroft accelerating away, trying to challenge both the time of the Morgan and the Audi. Approaching the bottom of the S. But it's not to be, and a disappointing 34.36 for the Porsche driver. Now the turn of the Morgan driver, Peter Garland, hard at it on the bottom regions of the hill. Squeezing every ounce of power out of the 4-litre V8 engine, he accelerates up towards the S's. Again in spectacular style to record a 31.12. It's all up to Mikkola to do it again. Can he take the class and fastest time? A superb start and raising the dust as he comes into the kennel bend. Brilliant acceleration between the two with one wheel off the floor and the tail trying to get away. Left foot braking into the S's, a snake in the middle of them. And a time of 29.51. Hannu Mikkola takes his class and a record at Shelsley. The crowd are ecstatic. And for that matter, so are his fellow drivers in and among them.
Hannu, congratulations. You came here to take that record and you did it.
Yes, I think it was a very nice day.
Now, this perhaps the last time with a car. You must have some regrets.
Yes, it is. You know, I have been with Audi from the start, and I have been with the car to get it in this stage, and I already thought that I haven't got the chance to drive it anymore, and now when I got this chance, I was very pleased.
Will you be trying to persuade Audi to let you bring it back again, perhaps another time?
I don't know, you know, it's not really up to me to do it, but, you know, if I have got the chance to drive it, I love it.
Now everybody's saying perhaps now Mikkola will retire. Is that possible?
Oh, it's even possible. That was my last competition, but you know, that I know more in September, October. We will see what Audi is going to do, and you know, it's not decided anyway.
Well, whatever your decision is, thank you very much for coming. We hope you've enjoyed your performance as much as we've enjoyed watching it.
Oh, it has been a great pleasure to be there.
Hannu Mikkola, Audi and the Auto Union come to Shelsley. May it not be another 50 years before they come back again.